Space is vast, cold, quiet. But not the kind of quiet that soothes. It's a silence so profound, so complete, it feels like something alive. Like the absence itself is watching, listening, waiting. Beyond the edge of our solar system, far past the last planet and drifting through the dark void of interstellar space, Voyager 2 went silent. For 7 months, NASA heard nothing. No signal, no data, just dead air from a probe that had spoken to Earth for over 40 years. Launched in 1977, Voyager 2 was one of humanity's most ambitious missions, a robotic explorer carrying images, data, and even a golden record meant for any alien life that might find it. Over the decades, it sent back stunning images of our outer planets and invaluable scientific data from the edge of the solar system. But in March 2020, it suddenly stopped transmitting. No malfunction warning, no final message, just silence. NASA called it a likely system failure. After all, the spacecraft was decades old, running on fading power. Everyone expected it to go quiet eventually. But what happened next wasn't expected. Voyager 2 came back online. And what it sent wasn't normal. NASA had prepared for this. Of course they had. Probes don't last forever, especially not ones that have traveled over 12 billion miles through the harshest environment imaginable. Voyager was aging. Its systems, older than most of the people monitoring them, were expected to fail, but expectations do little to dull grief. The Deep Space Network, NASA's global array of antennae that had, for decades, cradled that frail connection, heard nothing. Engineers combed through logs, diagnostics, historical patterns. They blamed the radio silence on maintenance. The Goldstone dish in California was undergoing upgrades. Just a hiccup, they said, routine. But days turned to weeks. Weeks to months. Voyager 2 did not respond. There were no alerts, no emergency meetings broadcast to the world. Just a growing, quiet acceptance. That maybe this was it. That the final whisper from humanity's most distant explorer had come and gone, unceremoniously. That out there in the black, Voyager had finally succumbed to time and entropy. Among those who had worked with the probe, a silence of a different kind settled in. Not the cosmic silence of space, but something more human. A mourning that had no funeral. But then, in October, 7 months after the last signal, a final command was sent. A kind of last rite. Just a gesture. No one expected it to work. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncovered truths. And then, it happened. Voyager responded. Not a weak blip or garbled fragment, but a full transmission. Clear, coherent, as if nothing had happened. It reoriented its antenna, updated its trajectory, recalibrated systems. The machinery moved with purpose, like a limb waking from sleep. There was no sign of damage, no data loss, no degradation, just life. The control room didn't erupt in joy at first. The silence was stunned, as if everyone had simultaneously questioned their reality. Then came the cheers, half relief, half disbelief. It was impossible, but it had happened. The press releases came quickly. NASA celebrated the return of Voyager 2, citing the success of a delayed command and the resilience of the probe. The world moved on, charmed by the idea of an old explorer waking from slumber. But inside Jet Propulsion Labs, the celebration didn't last, because something was wrong. As engineers parsed the returning data, they noticed anomalies. Subsystems long dormant, shut down to preserve power decades ago, were now online. Instruments from the 1980s, thought to be irreversibly silent, had begun transmitting. Old protocols were active again. Old software routines, never designed to coexist, now ran in parallel without conflict. That wasn't supposed to be possible. The probe hadn't simply resumed communication. It had changed. Then came the signal patterns. Engineers noticed them first as irregularities, minor timing glitches, overlapping bursts. But these weren't random. They were rhythmic, recursive, echoes of Voyager's own systems, reflected and altered in real time. Some frequencies hadn't been used since launch. Others had never been programmed into Voyager at all. It was as though the spacecraft was transmitting its own blueprint. Not just a status report, but its identity. A recursive mirror of its own systems, layered like a fugue. Like it was rehearsing something. Or trying to be understood. NASA's official stance was cautious. Radiation-induced system behavior, they said. Benign, but the memos inside were different. Disturbed. Legacy protocols reactivated without input. Signal layering inconsistent with onboard software. Unknown interaction detected during blackout window. Independent researchers, combing through public datasets, spotted something even more bizarre. Portions of Voyager's return signal bore patterns strikingly similar to Voyager 1's telemetry, except in reverse. As if the two spacecraft, separated by billions of kilometers, were now linked. Not by signal, but by resonance. A kind of interstellar call and response. People started to whisper. Voyager hadn't simply survived the void. It had passed through something. Something that had seen it, touched it, and altered it, not physically, but informationally, logically. Something that had replied. At first, the anomalies were brushed aside. Cosmic radiation was the usual culprit, a catch-all for the unexplainable quirks of machines drifting beyond the heliosphere. And why not? Radiation was erratic, unpredictable. It caused glitches, bursts, static, noise, but this wasn't noise. It was signal. Patterns emerged in the returning data, sequences too structured to dismiss. Binary strings that weren't just technically correct, but elegant, clean, recursive. As if someone, or something, was refining them. Every packet of data from Voyager contained subtle changes, almost imperceptible, like the software itself was iterating, learning. Then the golden record began to transmit. Not its contents, those were analog, etched into the disk bolted to the side of the probe. No, this was digital data. Segments of the record's encoded map, audio patterns, snippets of the human heartbeat, the sound of ocean waves, musical tones in odd registers. But none of it should have been stored in Voyager's memory banks. It wasn't programmed to transmit the record, it wasn't even wired to read it. Yet here it was, echoing back to Earth. The team was stunned. Some assumed a leak, a prank, a simulation injected into the telemetry feed. But checksum tests passed. Every fragment was real, broadcast from the probe's current position in deep space. The question became obvious: how? And then the deeper question followed: why? In closed-door meetings at Jet Propulsion Labs, voices were raised. Old engineers, the ones who had built Voyager with their own hands, insisted the systems were incapable of this behavior. Even if some subroutine had gone haywire, it couldn't recompile data it was never designed to access. And certainly not in this structured, evolving way. Still, explanations were demanded. The official line was that cosmic radiation had corrupted dormant firmware, creating complex but ultimately harmless feedback loops. It was the kind of explanation that comforted politicians and press officers. Something to fill a paragraph on a website. Something that meant no further questions needed to be asked. But behind the curtain, the mood darkened. An independent analyst reviewing Voyager's data stream from her private lab in Finland noticed the strangest anomaly yet. The probe had, during its 7-month silence, shifted its orientation 3 times. Not random drift. Not reaction to solar pressure. Intentional maneuvers, precise and slow, each aligning it momentarily with distinct regions of space, none of which matched any mission protocol. In other words, Voyager had pointed itself. NASA denied it at first, claimed the orientation changes were minute, within expected margins. But internal logs showed otherwise. One engineer, sleepless and increasingly unnerved, noted in his private journal, it was like it was looking around. Even more disturbing were the telemetry timestamps. They didn't match Earth time. Not quite. There were bursts of data with intervals that followed no human timekeeping system. Instead, they matched pulsar cycles, specifically, the rotational patterns of known millisecond pulsars scattered across the sky. It was as if Voyager had learned to listen, and now it was answering in kind. At this point, security around the project was quietly upgraded. Communications were rerouted through encrypted internal servers. Analysts were assigned code names. No data was released publicly without top-level review. The fear wasn't just public panic, it was what might be hidden in the signal that no one had yet seen. No one wanted to be the one who missed the message, or unleashed it. Because that's what the transmission had become, a message. But not in a language we understood. The patterns were linguistic in form, if not in content. Recursive, mirrored structures. Start and end points. Refrains. Rhythms. As if the machine had become a composer of logic. A vessel for something else. Something that had no voice, but infinite ways to speak. In one memo, leaked to a small and quickly scrubbed scientific forum, a phrase appeared that chilled those who read it. The probe is transmitting a behavioral schema. It wasn't just data, it was behavior. Instructions. Not for us, but for itself. And the strangest part, it wasn't chaotic, it was orderly. Evolving. NASA quietly assembled an interdisciplinary team, mathematicians, linguists, AI researchers, cryptographers. Some didn't even know what they were analyzing. They were given fragments, stripped of context. Each came to the same conclusion: the signal was becoming more refined. Each burst of transmission carried improvements, like a mind sharpening its thoughts with every breath. But the mind wasn't human. It wasn't even mechanical, not exactly. It was something else. One cryptographer, after reviewing weeks of signal data, said only, "It's not talking to us. It's talking through us." And in the silence of that statement, the implications grew monstrous. Because if Voyager had encountered something, an environment, a field, a presence, then it wasn't just acting as a probe anymore. It was a bridge. A conduit. What exactly did Voyager 2 encounter during those silent months drifting beyond our solar system? Was it a cosmic anomaly, some strange energy field or magnetic disturbance we've never seen before? Or could it be something far more extraordinary, an intelligence not of this world, communicating not with words, but through code and patterns? The truth is, no one knows. The data is baffling, unsettling, and unlike anything NASA has ever seen. Voyager 2 came back not just alive, but transformed, as if it had touched something profound out there in the darkness, a force that altered its very being. And now, with that signal still streaming in, the question isn't just what happened to Voyager 2. It's what we are going to do with this knowledge. Because if this is a message, then someone, or something, is listening. And they might be waiting for our reply. What would you say if you could talk back to the stars? What secrets do you think Voyager 2 uncovered in the vast silence beyond our sun? Is this the beginning of a cosmic conversation, or a warning we weren't prepared to hear? The universe is far bigger and stranger than we ever imagined. And Voyager 2's journey is far from over. Click this for more video to uncover the evidence they don't want you to see.